Imagine a day that will forever be etched in your memory. A day that changed the course of history and left an indelible mark on the world. For many of us, that day is September 11th, 2001, a date that will live in infamy. It's a day that I remember vividly as I was walking back into my fourth grade classroom when the news broke. My teacher's words still echo in my mind. Something's happening in New York City. The world as I knew it stood still. It was a moment that made me realize that the world was much bigger than my small circle. As the world struggled to come to terms with the devastating terrorist attacks, the Green Bay Packers were preparing to face the New York Giants on the following Sunday. But little did they know, their lives and the lives of millions of Americans were about to change forever. We were planning for a road trip to New York, and somebody down the hall says, "Hey, turn on the TVs." "Something's going on," recalled Aaron Popke, the Packers' director of public affairs. The scenes that unfolded on those TVs were nothing short of horrific, and they still evoke strong emotions to this day. Almost 3,000 people lost their lives in the attacks, leaving a nation in shock and grief. But in the midst of that tragedy, an unlikely hero emerged, Chris Gizzi, a Packers linebacker and Air Force Academy graduate. Gizzi's story is one of courage, resilience, and patriotism. As he reflected on that fateful day, he said, "My first thought was, what are we doing next for the Air Force? You just want to process that." The NFL, like the rest of the country, was in a state of uncertainty. The league announced that it would cease game operations for at least the second week of the regular season, leaving players and fans wondering what would happen next. But as time went on, America had to move on. The NFL decided to resume play, and the Packers were scheduled to face the Washington Redskins on Monday Night Football, just 13 days after the attacks. It was a game that would become a symbol of hope and resilience for a nation still reeling from the tragedy. And this is where Chris Gizzi's story becomes truly inspiring. Before he became an NFL player, Gizzi was a public relations officer for the Air Force, a job that he continued to do on his off days from football. He would often visit high schools and Rotary clubs, speaking about the importance of service and patriotism. But on that Tuesday, September 11th, Gizzi's role took on a new significance. As he watched the events unfold on TV, he knew he had to do something. He was set to serve the Air Force that day, but instead, he found himself trying to make sense of the chaos. The Packers coach, Mike Sherman, had an idea that would change the course of the game and the nation's healing process. He asked Gizzi to lead the team onto the field, carrying an American flag. It was a moment that would become etched in the memories of millions of Americans. Gizzi, with the flag held high, sprinted onto the field, and the crowd erupted in cheers. It was a moment of pure patriotism, a moment that transcended the game of football. As Gizzi reflected on that moment, he said, "It wasn't rehearsed. I really didn't know what was going to happen. But I knew once I stepped on Lambeau, the ground started shaking, and it doesn't do that every time. The crowd's reaction, the tears in the eyes of those watching, and the sense of healing that frayed the air, those are the lasting memories of that game. It was a moment that reminded us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And this is the part that most people miss, the impact that Chris Gizzi's actions had on the nation's healing process. It was a moment that showed us that, even in the face of tragedy, we can come together as a nation and find strength in our shared values. But here's where it gets controversial. Some people might argue that the NFL's decision to resume play so soon after the attacks was insensitive, that it was too soon to be thinking about football. Others might say that it was a necessary step towards healing, that it provided a much-needed distraction from the tragedy. What do you think? Should the NFL have resumed play sooner, or was it too soon? Let us know in the comments. As we reflect on that fateful day, we are reminded that the world is a complex and often unpredictable place. But we are also reminded that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And that's a lesson that we can all learn from Chris Gizzi's story. So let's take a moment to remember the lives lost on that day. And let's honor their memory by coming together as a nation, just as we did on that Monday night football game. It's a moment that will forever be etched in our memories, a moment that reminds us of the power of patriotism, hope, and resilience.